Hello, and welcome to the HTML5 lecture series at SNHU. I'm Tom Adamson, visiting professor, and this is lecture 12 on CSS concepts. And I hope you don't mind the glasses again. Anyway, let me know what you think. What this lecture is going to be on, it's not going to be about CSS coding, Cascading Style Sheets coding. It's going to be about concepts of Cascading Style Sheets. We're going to cover the coding part in a further lecture. Let's see what CSS stands for. Some of you might already know. Hey, how do you like the color? Pretty cool, huh? Okay, CSS. CSS. It stands for CASCADING Cascading. You might say, what does cascading mean? Well, it's cascading style sheets. And in order for you to get the idea of what we mean by cascading, like for example, it might be a person here that would ask that question. You know, what do you mean by cascading? And he would probably be here. He would look a little bit sort of like this, and he would be asking this question right here, probably pointing up to what we just said here, and he would say, "What do you mean by cascading?" Question mark. And that's probably what he'd be asking. So to show what we mean by cascading, what I want you to think of is look at a waterfall. The water falls from a high point and cascades into a river. Okay, so look at a waterfall. What does a waterfall do? It falls from a high point and it cascades into a river. Well, what does it mean by that? Well, let's get a high point here where the water is going to fall from. Okay, let's say this is a high place. And the water is falling. This is the water falling. And it goes in a certain direction, and then some of the water hits a boulder. Let's say this is a boulder. When it hits the boulder, its direction changes. If it hits another boulder, its direction changes again until it hits the river. This is the river. The important point is the last direction the water took was determined by the last rock it hit. So what's important about cascading, the concept of cascading, is that the water comes over the high point, comes over the cliff, it starts falling, and then if it hits a boulder, its direction changes. So the direction here has nothing to do with what the initial direction was. The direction that the water takes, the last instruction it takes, is from the last boulder it hit just before it gets into the river. So we're going to come back to this concept, but that's what the word cascading means. Okay, now, moving right along, we have to now understand what we mean by style, because that's the next word. Okay, so let me get rid of this stuff here. Okay. All right, so now we know what the concept of cascading is. That's where they got the word from. That the last action taken by something is the last thing that influenced it, not the first thing that influenced it or anything else in the middle. It's the last thing that influenced it. Okay, so the next thing we're going to look at is a person here saying, and she might be saying here, she might be saying, and it'll be a girl here, and she might be saying, here we are, she might be saying, okay, I think I got it. Got cascading. So she thinks she understands that part, but now what about style? What do you mean by that? Okay, and that's a good question. And then, of course, she would be probably doing the same thing like this. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about now. The next thing we're going to talk about is style. What does style mean? Well, style could be what you're wearing. You know, you're in style, right? What does that mean when you say, well, you're in style? It's based on what your appearance is, right? What you look like, how you appear. So style as the way W-H-A-Y, the way W-A-Y, in which a web page is expressed. Like, for example, its presentation. This is the web page. This is what the viewer sees. It could be the color of the web page. It could be the font that's used in the web page. It could be whether or not there's borders. Style has to do with presentation. It doesn't have to do with structure. In other words, it doesn't have to do with necessarily there's a paragraph here or there's a line break here. What it has to do with is what kind of font's used in the paragraph, what color is the font bold, is it italic, that kind of stuff. So that's what style means. Okay, so now we know, we have an idea of what cascading means, we have an idea of what style means. Now we need to look at, okay, the next, sheets. What do they mean by sheets? Well, that's what you put on your bed before you go to sleep at night, right? Well, they don't mean it that way. Let's look at what sheets are. A sheet, Cascading Style Sheet, S-H-E-E-T. As in a sheet of paper. It's like a style sheet is like a sheet of paper. They could have called it Cascading Style Documents, but they didn't. Let me talk. It's like a web document which is a text file with HTML code, okay, with an .html extension. If you recall, a web document has HTML code in it, and it's a text file. You can do it, make it with a text editor, and it has the extension .html, okay? Now, so what's the style sheet? The style sheet is also a text document not with HTML code, but with style code. And the extension .css. So what we see, what the style sheet is, it's nothing more than a separate document, that's nothing more than a text document, and it contains style code in it, and the extension is .css. Whereas with a web document, it contains HTML code in it, and it has the extension .html. However, both of them are text documents. So that's what sheet means. So a cascading style sheet means something to do with cascading. It sets the style of the page, and it's a separate document that has the extension, a separate text document that has the extension .css. Okay, moving right along on CSS concepts. My classic notes here. Let's go to the next page. Here's a very important concept. This is an important concept for you to get. When I'm working with my browser, here's my browser. Okay? On the front of the browser, what's being displayed to me is the web page. That's what I see. Okay? There's the user looking at the web page. This is going to be resulting from a .html text document and a .css text document. What's actually happening here now is I have my normal HTML document, .html, which is HTML instructions. That's going to the browser, and this is coming from the cloud. But I also now have another text document with a .css extension, and this contains style instructions. And this is also going to the browser. The browser uses both of these. And this also is coming from the cloud. Now, one might think that this document comes from the same server as that document. Doesn't have to. This could come from a document, a server that's located in Bangladesh. This could come from a server that's located in New York. They don't have to be on the same, physically on the same site, but generally they are. So what you want to think of is that when you're using Cascading Style Sheets, you're actually using two documents. One is an HTML document with HTML instructions. It's a text, nothing more than a text file with .html extension. You're using a style sheet with style instructions. It's nothing more than a text document with .css extension. These are merging together and now giving you a rich web page that has nice structure, and hopefully it looks good. It looks pleasing to the eye. Okay, so let's take a look a little bit further at these concepts. Okay, the web page styling can be done three ways. Three ways. One way is what we've talked about, by an external style sheet. Which is a text file with a .css extension. Another way, which we haven't talked about yet, is by an internal style. And this is a part of the .html document. And we'll talk about that. We'll talk about how you do that. And then three is inline styles. And this is as an HTML attribute. If you recall, the last lecture we had was on attributes and what attributes were. And attributes always came in value pairs. There was the name of the attribute, the identifier, and its value. So in inline styling, I actually go to the HTML element and I put an attribute in the opening tag that will affect the styling of that element. On this one right here, this is an internal style sheet where the styling instructions are included with the HTML document. On this one here, this is an external style sheet, and this is the kind we've talked about before. So what I'd like to do next, let me just make sure, check my notes. What I'd like to do next is I'd like to show you a program that can do that. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to erase this stuff here. And we're going to look at how we get an external style sheet. So coming here to the screen, what I've got here is I have an HTML document and I have a .css document. Both of these were created using Notepad. Nothing else. I don't need anything I have to buy. CSS is a W3C recommendation, and just like the HTML is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep on the screen there, on the screen, and I'll come over here, and I'm going to open this, open with Notepad. And when I open this with Notepad, let's look at some of the code. I'm going to spread this out so we can look at it. Some of this should be very familiar. There's HTML right there, which is, of course, the root element, right? Because it doesn't have a parent. Then there's the head element right here, from here to here. Okay? And let me spread this out a little bit more. What is probably new to us is the link. This is a link element, and the link element is a void element right here. I have to tell it that what I'm looking for, the relationship is going to be a style sheet, And this is an attribute. There it is. There's the identifier, and there's the value. And there's the identifier, and there's the value. The type is going to be a text. It's going to have the extension CSS. And the hyperlink reference is going to be mystyle.css. Now, what's important about this, do you see I have a capital S for style here? I could call it anything I wanted to, but I want to make sure that if whatever capital letters I use here in the name of the file I'm looking for, that they're honored in that name of the file. There's the body, and it says, welcome to my home page. Now, let's see what's in this one. I'm going to open it, and when I open it, you see it's nothing more than text. And let me get this here. What the style sheet is saying is that in the body element, which is, this is the body element right here, I want the background, right up here, I want the background to be black, and I want the foreground color to be silver. So anything in the body element, the background will be black, and this is in the body element, welcome to my home page, so that'll be silver. So what I've done is I've used an external style sheet to set the style of the page. So let's see what it looks like. Let's look at the web page itself. And there it is. It says, welcome to my home page. So let's see if this makes sense. I told it I wanted it to be, let's see, where'd my style sheet go? There it is. I wanted the background to be black, and sure enough it was. I wanted the foreground, in this case the text, to be silver, and sure enough it is silver. So that's with using an external style sheet. And what's new is this link element right here, which is a void element. It has no closing tag. And I put 3 attributes in it. And it's just copy and paste. And whatever you name your style sheet, that's what it is. Okay? That's what you call here. What I'm going to do now is I'm now going to use the second thing, which is an internal style sheet. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here, and I'm going to put a paragraph tag here, just to have something different from the H1. This is my really great web page. Okay? And then I'm going to come here, close this off, close that off. Whoops, I'm sorry. And then put a P in here and close that off. Now, in order to have an internal style sheet, I have to go to the head element right here, and I have to put in a child element that's called style. This way I'm telling the browser that what follows is style sheet code. It's not HTML code. This is when I include the style instructions within the HTML document, which I'm doing right here. So I have to find where my mouse is. Where'd my mouse go? Oh, there it is up here. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say, okay, here's what I want for the paragraph. I want the paragraph, I want its color to be gold. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to close the code on the paragraph. How the code works is really not important now. The idea is that I put in a style element right here. And I told it that for the paragraph element P, I want its color to be gold. So I'm going to do a Control-S to save this, and I'm going to come here and I'm going to refresh this page. And when I do, let's see, style for the paragraph. It's still, what I'm going to do here is, let's see, let's pause it. Can we pause it? Can we pause the video? That's okay. You all right? Okay. I didn't put a semicolon here. I put a colon. So let me go ahead and save this again. And now let me go ahead and refresh this. And now I can see that it's gold. Let me bring this up. Okay? So what happened here is that I now have the style element within my HTML document. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a style element within, I'm going to make it an attribute in the paragraph, S-T-Y-L-E. There it is, there's the identifier, and now what I'm going to put here, I'm going to put color, and I'm going to make the color, let's say, tan. Okay, but a semicolon, well, I'm just going to put it like this. Okay, the color is tan. So there's the attribute. Okay, right here, right there. Okay, and notice it's the value pair. So let's see what happens now, and it's put in the opening tag. That's called inline styling. So let's see what happens. I refresh it, and now if you notice, it's now tan, and maybe that wasn't close enough. Let me try and make it red. Now, unfortunately, for people who are colorblind, you may not see the red. It might merge with the black. So black and red is not necessarily a good thing to do. But now it's red. Now, notice this. Notice this. Cascading. Up here, I told it that I wanted the paragraph style to be gold, and it was gold. But down here, I told it I wanted the color to be red. So what did it do? It made it red. Even though the former instruction up here said gold, the latter instruction, and this was the last boulder hit, said red, and it'll follow the last instruction it got. I could come back up here to this style sheet, the external one that I had, and what I could do is, remember I had that I wanted everything in here to be silver? Well, it wasn't, because these overrode it. This was a boulder, the internal one, and this was a boulder. And so this is the last boulder that it hit, and therefore that's the last style that it takes. This is my really great web page. Okay, now back here on the board, now let's see why it's called cascading. First, when it first comes off the waterfall, I have the browser default. And the browser default, as you will recall, when you just set up a browser page with no styling, the background's white and the foreground is black. Okay, that's the browser default. The next thing, the first boulder it hits when it comes off is an external style sheet. The next boulder it hits is going to be an internal style sheet. And the last boulder it's going to hit is going to be an inline style. This takes priority. So this gives us great flexibility, because sometimes we can have this in there. For some documents, we won't have it in there. We'll just have this. Now here's one thing that should be important. If you notice what we did, let's go back to the screen there, please. If you notice what we did here is that we had the external style sheet first, and then we had the internal style sheet second. We could have switched this around. We could have made it so the internal one was first and then the external one was second. If that's the case, if these two are switched, then the last one will take priority. In other words, if I had the internal style sheet definition first and then I call the external style sheet will now cascade over the internal style sheet, and it will take priority over the internal style sheet. Okay, let's make a conclusion on this. wrap this up. For ease of maintaining and maximum flexibility, always use external style sheets. Always use external style sheets. The reason why, this might be your website. This is your website here. And your website might have several different web documents to give different web pages. This might be .html, might link to another one .html, might link to another one .html. Generally, you want your style to be consistent in your website. So what you want to do is you want to try and use one style sheet that's called by each of these. So if for some reason you want to change the background color from black to blue, you do it here, it does it on all these. Or you want to change the font size to something else that does it on all these. Then you can cascade if you wish. One of the things you don't want to do is avoid using inline styles. In other words, avoid mixing HTML with a style attribute. Avoid coming back on the screen here, if you could, please. Avoid doing this. The reason why is that if you do your styles this way, this becomes a maintenance nightmare. Plus, there's no guarantee that this will work on all appliances. A lot of appliances may not understand what this attribute is. The problem with HTML editors is a lot of editors will set the styling up this way, which is what you don't want. The next better way is here, and the best way is to use it externally. Okay, that's it for this lecture. Thank you for attending.